Hello.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to day 15, halfway through our 30 for 30 discussions. Today, my special guest is Penny Kittle.
Who you see plenty of on screen.
And we thought today we would just do a little bit of what are we thinking about, and just the kind of conversations that Penny and I often have when the camera's not on, and so we thought we'd try that. So, but before we get into that, I thought maybe we'd come back to maybe a book talk or two, Penny.
Absolutely. Right now I'm reading Floating, Brilliant, Gone. Franny Choi is a poet who is part of the Project Voice group, which is Phil Kay and Sarah Kay. This is my second collection of her poetry, and I already have probably 15 of them turned over, and I'm halfway through. She is amazing at short, intense glimpses of life. And I also really appreciate she's bold and courageous. I love it. I love it. And the other one, I don't know if you know The Talk, Kelly. The power of this book. So it is all short pieces written by mostly YA authors of color. And the premise is that the authors want to talk about, sorry, they're at the top, Wade Hudson and Cheryl Willis Hudson are parents, and they want to have multiple talks with their kids about all kinds of things, how to deal with issues that come up on the playground. And so every one of these has the voice of what a parent or a teacher could use in a classroom. Let me just give you a glimpse. And when the weight of being a Black girl feels like a burden and not a blessing, remember this. Black girl, you are a miracle. Know that you can survive what feels impossible to survive because someone somewhere prayed for you, is praying for you, because someone somewhere already survived, is surviving. That's the start of Renee Watson's Remember This. And so
Wow.
this, I think, especially for teachers who are trying to navigate talk about race, these little selections and their short, maybe 2-page entries are going to take you places that will surprise you. Like, I want to say one more. This one is To My Daughter, Not a China Doll, Grace Lynn. And it's written like notebook entries. And it's to my daughter when she turns 10. Right now, you are 5 years old and you love lots of cute things. We both do. Cute baby ducklings, cute smiley cookies, cute bunny stickers. So I know it might be confusing that I bristled when you were called a cute China doll. And it goes from there into the history and the why. So I just think this is really important.
That's cool. Those are great suggestions. So I'm thinking in a different direction today. When I first started teaching, a mentor teacher of mine, John Powers, gave me a really nice copy of Hamlet. And he said to me that he collects nice versions of books that he's taught over the years. And so I've done the same thing on the books that I've taught over the years. So like the folio collection, right? All Quiet on the Western Front. I have a little collection of books over here in the corner of books that, and I don't know, I mean, I haven't taught this book in years and don't know if I would ever teach it again if I were still in the classroom. But just having really nice versions of books. And this book has, kind of cool illustrations in it that, I don't know, I take a comfort in collecting books that mean a lot to me. Here's my version of 1984, right? Again, really, really, really nice versions of the books that I collect. At one time I was teaching To Kill a Mockingbird. I think that's problematic now, but for years, I had this really nice version of To Kill a Mockingbird. The first book he gave me was a version of Hamlet, and he had a nice inscription, as you begin your career, you might think about collecting really nice books. And then as I left the classroom this year, I took that book and I signed it over to another new teacher and handed it to her as a sort of a passing of the torch. And just, I think it's a cool little tradition to impart onto a new teacher.
I like that. I really like the idea of passing on something that mattered to you to someone new. I've been reading Twitter this week from the number of teachers who have either just come off spring break or are gearing up for that last quarter, and they're absolutely exhausted. My heart is so full for people who are trying to stand up right now. My daughter, as you know, second year teacher, is taking her first day off today in 2 years because she got
Mm.
the second vaccine yesterday and she's really sick today. I
Oh, no.
think that they're managing so much, her worry over whether she's losing a day with kids who need her, and so much, so much. So I just think this has been the year for teachers to be held up.
I mean, I agree with everything you said. I'm wondering if some strength could be taken from the fact that, it seems that there is normalcy is out there, or what's going to be the new normal is out there. And if you can just hang in there another few weeks, but I hear the same thing from my colleagues.
Yeah. Yeah. And so today, one of the things that I think is interesting to me about the work of teaching is that I became a better teacher when I started presenting at conferences. Not I was a better teacher, so I was ready to present, but rather I was teaching. And then when I had to present on what I was doing, it made me be very analytical about what I was doing and to try to come up with all of the answers to questions I thought people might ask me about what I was doing in my practice. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about presenting today and the importance of how do you, I don't know, get your foothold in the work in kind of a different field. There's teaching every day, and then there's taking that work outside of your district in your school. For me, it was the New Hampshire Council of Teachers of English, which is no longer an organization, works very small. But I went down to their conference in Bedford on my own, had submitted a proposal. There were 6 or 8, I think I'm exaggerating, with 8 people in the room and a whole bunch of empty chairs and an overhead projector. And I just, it taught me a whole lot to try to put my thinking into cohesive words.
You've given me PTSD because you reminded me the first time and I get asked this a lot, and I'm sure you do too. How did you start presenting? For me, it was in the Anaheim Union High School District when we had one of those all day, all English department gatherings. And that was 16 different schools of English departments. And they had, I don't know, 10 or 12 English teachers that were presenting breakout sessions. And I was a very young teacher at the time. And
Mm.
they asked me to do a session. This administrator talked me into doing it, right? And you're right, the preparation for that in putting your thinking down and how am I going to present this
Mm.
really makes you think about what you're doing third period. Of course, the PTSD comes into play when a grand total of two people came and attended my very first workshop that I ever did, including the one person who talked me into it. But that didn't take away from the preparation. It didn't take away from the preparation and thinking about how am I going to share X with it. And I would say this as well. I think the one thing that's always helped me to stand in front of teachers, and for those of you listening to this thinking that you might get in front of teachers one day, the thing that helped me the most really was adopting the mindset that I wasn't going to teach teachers. What really helped me was I'm going to share what I'm doing in my class and what I'm thinking about it. And coming at it through that lens made it easier. And even today, I know when you and I are standing in front of a large audience, there are teachers out there that are doing things way better than some of the stuff that I've done, right? But it's just, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. This is how I kind of played with it in the classroom, and I'd like to share that thinking with you. Coming at it through that lens was very, very helpful for me.
Yeah, and the intent behind that, because that's what I learned in that very first presentation. My intent was, this is what I'm thinking about. What do you think about my thinking? So the intent was, I'm sharing it simply to start a conversation that I'm not having in my own school, right? And what happened in that workshop was I brought college admissions essays and the work that I had done to prepare my students to write them. And a teacher immediately said, there is no time in our curriculum for that. We were all about literary analysis. I thought you were going to talk about that. And I said, well, talk to me about how do you support all the kids who don't have people to help them with their admissions essays? Because that's what my colleague and I had done, is start these morning 7 a.m. sessions for all these kids who had no one to help them with the essays. So I liked that when people come, you have conversations. That's what I've missed the most. You and I will present tonight at 4:30 in a webinar, and we will have very little interaction with people in the room, right? That's what I miss so much, because they make me think harder.
Yeah, I mean, I could share, and so could you, a number of different times when we're out in an audience and we present X, and then we get to the break and somebody comes up to us and said, I like what you said, but have you thought about maybe tweaking it this way or doing it that way? That is what I really miss in this era of Zoom.
Yeah.
And I know that kind of what was the impetus behind this conversation today is that Penny and I are doing part one of a 3-part Heinemann workshop later this afternoon, 4:30 Eastern. And we have been preparing for it for the last couple of days. And that preparation has made us go in places that were unexpected. And we thought we'd just kind of kick some of that thinking around with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start with, I'm just going to share my screen for one thing and show people that this slide is where it started. So in this book, Reading Revealed, that's a K-8 book on the teaching of reading with 50 teachers sharing practices. It's really a great book. They have this chart, and I was so struck by the fact that in many classrooms where I've been coaching, everybody jumps to part 5 before they hit step 1. So it says that what matters in the development of a reader is that a student understands reading as a meaning-making process. Part 2, believe they can make sense of it, find reading pleasurable because of some intrinsic thing they're looking for. They begin self-monitoring, and then you teach them, right? They have this repertoire of skills and strategies to problem solve meaning. It doesn't mean you don't teach before that, but rather that's when they use it, when they've already have the book they want to read, they want to make sense of it, they're trying to make sense of it, they're problem solving. And I was so struck when I read this that we've had lots of instruction on how to teach skills and strategies, but we're expecting kids to apply them when they're at step 1 going, there's something here I'm supposed to figure out. Not that I'm bringing myself to the reading and making meaning, but rather I should just find that meaning. And also that many of the students we see in middle and high school no longer believe that they have the ability to make sense of a text. They are, just tell me what I need to know.
Well, I think that comes back to the conversation we had a few days ago with Chris Tavani, right? When she said that one of the mistakes that she's made, and I think we've all made in our careers, is that we want to teach kids, those tools on the reader's tool belt. But if they're not reading and they don't see themselves as readers, and there's no reading identity and no reading momentum, you could hand me plumbing tools, but if I don't want to be a plumber and I have no desire to be a plumber,
Exactly.
who cares, right?
Exactly. And if the text itself does not make you want to make meaning, then you're not going to use that tool or strategy. You're going to sit back and go, just tell me what it says, because the text matters too to the kid. And I think this is a complicated thing. It's not a simple do this or that, but rather it drove us to some thinking. So I have like my first draft thinking following the same chart to say, why does revision matter on an everyday basis? The kind of work that we do. And that's not thinking that I had tried to map out, like, first you need this, then you need that. Like I had to really unpack things that I've been thinking about, but not articulating well, about the conditions in a classroom. And then talking to you, we started talking about what became chart number 2, which is a huge mess. Look at all the arrows, even the steps were out of order. And it started with what matters in writing, and it became what building a volume of low stakes writing practice makes possible. Big title. But the idea that you've got to have this, but like why and in what order was all new thinking, I think, for both of us.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that if we ever follow through with that and end up publishing that in an article or something somewhere, it's going to change again.
Yeah.
That it is initial draft thinking of it. Maybe you could put the reading one back up again just for a second.
Yeah.
So, it got us to thinking that there's sort of a sequence in what matters in developing young readers. And so that sequence then got us to thinking, as Penny just said, what would that sequence be for young writers? And since we couldn't see it, Penny, could you read kind of the steps again so that we can compare it with the 5 that are up there?
Okay, so this is for why you need a volume of what building a volume of low stakes writing practice makes possible. At step 1, the student understands, wait. The student puts words on the page in imitation of prompts to develop their own writing. The student can find ideas for writing.
So when we have kids who are super reluctant writers, sometimes our first step is, hey, look at this writer over here and let's emulate it. Right? It's a way to get some momentum, way to get some identity going.
Yeah. And so then step 2, which was originally they'll build confidence, became step 3. Step 2 for us was recognizing and accepting crappy first drafts as a step in the writing process. That once you've got them created a volume of words, there are going to be days when the words don't come, right?
Well, and many students are paralyzed to even put words on the page because they feel that what they have to write has to be good right out of the chute.
And that they realize that crappy first drafts are no indication of their ability as writers. That's an important point, but it doesn't come by us telling them, you're a good writer. What are you worried about? No, it comes from the daily practice teaches that, not us.
And the daily modeling of us putting crappy words on a page too. And how many times does, we spit out, right?
Yeah.
We sneeze words onto a page, and that turns into something else entirely a day or 2 days or 3 days from now. It's just getting going.
Yeah. And then being willing to say, okay, there must be something there. And sometimes there isn't, but trying to work with crappy stuff that you have. But that made step 3. Those first 2 things develop confidence in the student in the ability to fill a page. I have kids who will say, if you don't tell me what to write, I can't write. I can't write more than a sentence or 2.
Wow.
They move past that. They really do.
And as we've said many times, and when my kids are writing in marbly looking composition books, our goal is 10 minutes, 1 page of writing, 10 minutes, 1 page of writing. And my goal is that every student is on board by the 2nd month of school, even if it's the crappiest thing you've ever written, but words are happening on the page. Let's go.
Well, and you saw in my college classes this fall, kids in the same place. Like, I can't do this unless you tell me what to write and how to write it. And those notebook tours at the end. Okay, so I would say if you didn't get very far today, go home and finish that page. Go home and finish, we did 2 or 3 quick writes, finish those. Mm-hmm. So then step 4, and we went back and forth moving these around, which I just love that nature of this. They can transfer the confidence they've built in notebooks and the fluency they gained to assignments. They replace procrastination with a process that they have seen work in their work. That's a big step.
Well, sure. I mean, especially since you're seeing college students who can't do that. College students who got A's and B's in high school English.
Yeah. But think about this. We might want to enter at step 4. You should, get the work done for this. You should be drafting by now. You should be telling kids to use a process that they don't have any confidence in on an assignment is just not going to happen the way it will happen if you build it over time. And then step 5, continues writing outside of class for their own purposes. Isn't that what we wanted for all kids? Right? You become
I think that's what we want for all kids, but I'm not sure in the school system a lot of times that's not the central focus. I mean, in this
Yeah.
testing age and standards age, the number one standard should be, will the kid write without me? And the number one reading standard should be, will the kid read without me?
Will the kid
Uh,
read when they're not in school with someone towering over them? Will they read for their own curiosity and purpose? So the revision one, um, again, went through this whole process of what comes first. And I kept thinking, is the image that we want this of like a foundation, that the foundation is step one and you build up, or is it the continuum? I'm still not
mm,
certain that I know which is best. But step one for why revision, this revision that we talk about, the daily revision of quick writes. So step one is they have a desire to revise. I think we forget that just making marks on the page is meaningless. Don't practice a tool if the text itself that you're writing is of no interest or value to you. This thing you're writing is important to you. You want to make it better.
mhm.
I mean, you just go, but seriously, how often
Well,
do
uh,
kids
I-
value what they're writing in school?
right. And I said this in a previous session, the number one determiner of whether you're going to revise meaningfully is if you care about what you've written. And
Yeah,
if the teacher is always the one deciding what you're writing about, I'm not going to care too much.
I felt that this morning. I have an assignment and I kept procrastinating and reading poetry. Step two, a volume of good writing embedded in your bones. You know the power of the right word. Your vocabulary is built on wide reading across genres. This will be the foundation for knowing what's not quite right in your own writing and what's possible.
Mhm.
Goes back to Frank Smith, right? If you don't have the volume of writing or reading, then it's very hard to produce the volume of writing, but the two go together.
Writers write.
Writers read, right? Builds their, to know how to make it better. Like it's just there.
Well, that's what Stephen King says in his book on writing, right? You don't even think about being a writer unless you're a voracious reader.
You won't have the tools you need to write, right? They're right there in reading. And then step three, the practice making it better, the low stakes revision in notebooks where the student decides what to do, not try this tool, teaches you to hear your work and how small changes improve it. It's like ease, fluency with revision that you have to build. And then step four, I can't decide if it's 4 or 5. 4 could be teach tools and strategies, because now that like try this, move your first line to the end, or there's strategies that I do teach about revision, but I get the volume first.
Mhm.
But I don't know if that should come before sharing. It requires confidence and responding to others' impression. And I wrote next to my notebook, maybe this isn't 4, but rather the ultimate goal is it, I mean, I don't know yet.
I mean, I think sometimes that sharing drives revision, right? Peer response, not peer editing. Peer response drives revision. We're going to talk about that today in our workshop as well.
That's an important thing, though, I didn't think of. Right? That's
right. Good. So, and sometimes I want to mess around with it before I show it to anybody. So I don't know that there's an answer in stone there. I think it's malleable.
Yeah, but we are closer to what we've been trying to say about the importance of notebooks and revision. And what I mean by closer is that somebody outside of it who's trying to figure out, why would I do this with students, might understand better how it fits within the whole scheme of teaching, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And we've both been presenting for a long time and never got here before.
Well, I'll state the obvious. Here we are again with 700 years of teaching between us. And
stop saying that.
and look at what we're doing, right? We're kicking it around. The value of having a thought partner, the value of having, even if you teach in a department that's not on board with your thinking, that finding that one person in which you can kick thinking around is incredibly important. It's the growth, that's, I think, really, really important. The reflection is really, really important, right? I mean, the most interesting people I know outside of teaching are all very reflective people, right? I've been in a monthly discussion group for years with people who are now in their 70s and 80s. They're all doctors and lawyers. They're the most curious people I've ever met, right? And this teaching of reflection, I think, should just underline everything that we do in the classroom and outside of the classroom.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing a thought partner does for you, you do for me a lot, which is you listen really well and you support me when I'm thinking about something, but then you challenge me.
Hmm.
I think that's an important factor. I wouldn't want somebody who always agrees with me. We've had some kind of very, like, we are fundamentally in different places and not just about sports teams, but about important things. And it's okay because then I listen and learn more.
I agree, 100%. Just stop challenging me so much and we'll be fine.
We'll be better friends if I would stop. Oh, good chat
So
with you.
with that, we thought that maybe we would end real quick with one lightning round question for each of us.
Mhm.
So Penny, tell me about a memorable workshop experience. I told you about presenting to two people. Tell me about one memorable workshop experience that you had.
Um, oh, this one just occurred to me. This is a really good one. I hope it's okay. Because I was going to share one that was really bad, but I was in Nova Scotia in 2008, and I had finished writing right beside them. And as you probably remember, Don Murray died while I was writing it. And Don Graves had become too ill to really understand it. So it was coming out, and my two biggest mentors, I couldn't share it with. And I was in Nova Scotia. They had gotten permission to get copies for the whole conference. I was there for 3 days. And on the first day at break, they all started appearing from the back swinging doors with copies of Right Beside Them. And they started handing them out. I had never seen, I'd only seen a preview copy. I hadn't seen it finished. And it was so powerful to be able to share that with a bunch of, I would say Canadians are so kind and warm and welcoming, and it was amazing. And my heart is somewhere in Halifax.
What a lovely story.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So my lightning round question for you is, what is vulnerability to you?
Well, I think vulnerability is, well, for example, my last few years of teaching, my classroom was turned into a learning lab. And I think something we might even talk about later this summer in your book love foundation. But I've had a number of teachers come in and observe me teach. And that's about as vulnerable as you can get, I think, as a teacher. Even as an experienced teacher, when I woke up on a particular morning and I knew I had visitors that day, there was an edge to it. Although I got pretty comfortable with not trying to be Superman in front of the visitors, right? Because I taught in a real world, place.
Yeah.
So, but I think vulnerability is inviting people into my classroom and saying, watch me try this. And then when the kids leave, let's sit down and talk about it.
Yeah, in my building in the last couple of years, Elaine Millen, who's one of my friends and just a brilliant educator, started instructional rounds, like medical rounds. And you signed up and you went, with permission, to 4 different classrooms for 15 minutes each, and then came back as a group and talked about it. And the first time they showed up in my room, I had like forgotten that I said they could come. And it was a class that was like, ooh, I'm going to struggle with this. And here in the back of the room are these colleagues I respect in a crowd. That's a place where you're just like,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. I survived. You survived. It's all good.
somehow. Well, wonderful to chat with you this morning.
We'll see some of you all later today, I hope, as we start this Heinemann series. For the rest of you, thank you for joining us. And we will be back tomorrow with a mystery guest.
Oh, a great guest. Can't wait.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye, everybody.